the executive director of the Alliance for the Seventh Generation. And it looks like y'all going to be recording this.
We are.
So again, the youth that I'm privileged to work with, they call me Big Bro. And I take that title very seriously and near and dear to my heart. Alliance for the Seventh Generation, we are on a mission to create thriving educational ecosystems by, for, and with youth. We're an international non-for-profit organization headquartered in Chicago, Illinois. And I'm coming to you live from Chicago today. So Joe, don't be jealous because we are going to have some pizza tonight, but I'll be thinking about you with every bite. And so we've been fortunate to connect with work happening around the world in New Zealand, New Mexico, California, New York, and a few other places. And so today, family, I want to talk to you about how this group, maybe you heard of this group before, called the Casa Grande Youth Alliance. Y'all ever heard of that group before?
I think so.
You think so? Okay, make some noise if you heard about the Cgya.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to y'all a little bit about joining an international youth voice movement. First, I want to give a little context as to why I'm a champion for youth voice. And I want to share a story about a friend of mine named Carlos. Carlos is a very close friend of mine. He had some struggles early on. In middle school, he was kicked out for, trying to sell something that was, some may say was illegal. He was told he was learning deficient. So he was in special education classes. My friend, when he was 14, he ran away from home, he got arrested. And then my friend tried to take his life in middle school. How many of y'all think that's pretty young to be trying to think about dying?
Yeah.
Fortunately, my friend has another part of his story. He told me that he realized he wasn't LD, learning deficient, he was LD, he learned different. And he started using that learning difference in school and started doing really, really well. And eventually my friend realized that he had a hustle and he could use the hustle for good. So eventually he created a community-based organization, created his own major at a university. And eventually my friend who has got the LD is now recently close to wrapping up a PhD in education. So familia, I wanted to share this story with you because it's very close to my heart, because Carlos isn't just a close friend of mine. This story that I'm sharing with you is the story of Roberto Carlos Rivera. This is my story, right? And a big part of my transformation was having folks like Bob in my life, having folks like Joe Martinez in my life, people who will give me opportunities to grow and be the leader that I was capable of becoming. And so when I was 19 years old, I was a director of an art center, of a teen center. I remember people would come in and would say, we'd like to talk to the person who's in charge here. And I'd say, that would be me, right? My 19-year-old self. And so at that center, we started doing workshops with the youth focused on the arts. And eventually that led to concerts, to us doing festivals, to us eventually doing hip hop theatrical productions. Between me and you all, I think Lynn Miranda and that whole Hamilton gig, I think they were biting those ideas from us. I think they maybe owe us some money. We got invited to the Kennedy Center, and it transformed not just the youth that I was serving, but myself as a 19-year-old, starting to find my voice. I ended up, doing well in school, and I created my own major and eventually started doing work all over the country, working with youth and working with communities. And I came to the conclusion, family, that no organization and no movement can be successful. It can't have an impact. It can't make a lasting change without young people being a part of it, without young people leading it and driving that thing forward. And as an example, I wanted to share a couple case studies from history. Y'all heard about Dr. King, right?
Mm-hmm.
Y'all heard about Rosa Parks,
Yes.
and maybe you heard a little bit about Ella Baker.
Mhm.
Yes.
But if you really look at this movement of civil rights, it's not just about a couple exemplary people. This movement of people, boarding buses and going down south, of people sitting at lunch counters, this was young people without youth, without teenagers, without folks in their early 20s. We talk about STIC. That was a group of teenagers and folks in their early 20s. Without them, civil rights would have never been successful, right? Or we think about apartheid. Y'all ever heard of apartheid down in South Africa?
Yes.
Yeah. So it was like legalized segregation. Y'all know when that stopped? What's your guess?
When somebody speaks
Raise
up.
your hand if you think it stopped in the 60s.
What did you say?
Do you think apartheid stopped in the 60s? Raise your hand if you think it stopped in the 70s. Raise your hand if you think it stopped in the 80s. Raise your hand if you think it stopped in the 90s. Okay, I see a hand, a couple hands. Raise your hand if you think it stopped after the 90s. Well, some of y'all didn't even raise your hand. I mean, what's going on here? Okay, the 50s. So apartheid ended in the 90s, and that wasn't that long ago, right? And so like there's still major conflict, major oppression that's happening in the world. And young folks have historically been a big part of that, right? Even in Brazil, they're having all these budget cuts. They're cutting all the social services and human services. And so young folks, just like Cgya, started connecting with adults and started doing real work on the ground and got the Congress to adopt the UN's rights of a child, stuff that, gives real basic rights to children, ensures that they can't be overworked, ensures that they can get a effective education in school. Now, they've adopted this UN's rights of a child in every Western country that, is in the West, every modern country, except for one country. Anybody want to guess what country has not adopted the UN's rights of a child?
The US.
Raise your hand if you agree with that. The United States has not adopted this. Even Somalia has adopted it. And so we got to ask ourselves, well, why is that the case? Right? And so continuing on here, it's not just these movements of the past, but we have these movements now, right? Like the Occupy Wall Street that happened a few years back, like the Black Lives Matters movement that's happening right now, like the movement to support folks to get DACA, supporting dreamers to eventually become citizens, like Arab Spring, right? Which young people were able to overthrow their dictator using social media. I'm thinking about Miss Malala, 16 years old. She got, a little award. Y'all hear about the Nobel Peace Prize? She won it as a teenager. Or anyone ever heard of Greta Thunberg? Give me a yes or a no.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to pause for a second and just ask you, like, when I use the term youth voice, what comes to mind? What do you think? What do you feel? Could be a word, could be a phrase. What do you think of when I say youth voice? Yes.
Young kids speaking out for themselves.
Did I hear you right? Young people speaking up for themselves.
Yeah.
Excellent. What else? Who else? Could be a word, could be a phrase. I know y'all got some Coca-Cola and stuff, so, let that energy out. Yes, ma'am.
A little bit. Overpowering.
Did you say overpowering?
Yes.
Can you just explain a little bit what you mean about that?
A lot of younger people coming together and overpowering the adults.
Because young people can have power, right? That's right. And sometimes, I think about Einstein. He says you can't solve the problem that you're facing with the same thinking you used when you created that problem. things like climate change, things like poverty. Y'all didn't create these things. Adults created these things. And are we going to look to the same places and the same people who created the problem to come up with the solution? Or do we need to look to new places? And as this young lady said, can you tell me your name again?
Piper.
Piper?
Yeah.
Okay. As Piper said, young folks can have power to change these realities, to come up with some solutions. Anybody else? Yes, ma'am, in the blue shirt.
Being heard.
Being heard. Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, gentleman with the teal shirt on.
Boldness.
Boldness. Yeah, there's a certain boldness. For us adults, man, we have jobs, we have bills, I got babies I gotta feed, and sometimes I have to be a little bit cautious because I don't want to lose my job. But you all can be more bold. You don't have these same bills and same kids. You can advocate fiercely right now. You have a lot of position to really advocate for change and power in ways that some adults don't feel at liberty to do, right? Anyone else?
Roberto, I want to say, just from the
Yeah.
adult perspective, a lot of times we see a problem from the perspective of all the things that won't work. Our young people are
Yes.
not limited by the things we can't do because their eyes are still kind of fresh and wide open to the possibilities. And
That's
so
it.
as an adult, I think I do well to listen to hear what they have to say instead of squashing the ideas that emanate from them, simply because we think it won't work. And so I think that's the perspective that Youth Voice brings.
Mm-hmm. Anybody agree with that? You ever share an idea and have a bunch of adults tell you how it's not going to work? Right? And, we talk about racism and classism and sexism, but adultism is real too, right? And adults, not listening to youth, not supporting their insights. And just like Brother Joe was saying, I'm getting close to getting my PhD. I'm around a bunch of really smart people. And a lot of these smart people, they get trained to analyze and to criticize and to critique, different theories and different, arguments and so forth. They can tear it all apart. But then if you ask them, well, what's the solution? What's the right way? They're like, right? They don't have that same creative muscle that you all have. And so that's why we need to partner together and try to do something unique. So I want to share a quick definition of youth voice that I came across that is defined by youth. This is coming from youth in LA. And actually, in the spirit of boldness, who would be willing to read this definition? Who could read this definition?
Part of it's covered.
Yeah.
You can minimize the go. Valia's gonna read it.
Okay. Cool.
You got to have good 20/20 vision now. I'm sorry. Maybe the type isn't big enough.
Sorry, man. I gotta go then. You said minimize it, Bob?
But yeah, click on the top left. There you go. The top
Left,
top
there we
left
go.
box.
Okay, there we
Yeah.
go.
All
The
right.
definition of youth voice as defined by youth, an expression of the human spirit that is shown in different forms such as art, words, poetry, and music. Engaging in the creation of your own opportunities to speak out to authority, believing in putting our voices into practice so youth can be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Can we snap it up or clap
Don't
it
get
up?
like, put it again.
Thank you for your boldness.
Okay, hold
Now,
on.
my question to you all is, what words stand out from this that I don't know, kind of stand out in your mind? Just shout out a word that kind of stands out of this definition.
Yeah.
Yeah. that's good. Opportunities to speak out.
Opportunities to speak out. Thank you. What else?
Yeah, go. Speak up.
Just for their definition, it says that just somebody speaking can be different forms, as it says art, poetry, even music, not just speaking.
Speaking and using different forms such as art, words, poetry.
Mm. Yeah, that's powerful, right? Because we're, as adults, we think of having a voice and that's someone, talking all the time, like Charlie Brown, wah, 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 right? But for young folks, maybe it's not talking. Maybe it's through art or poetry or visual art or, something creative. And I think that's really insightful. Thank you for sharing.
Piper.
Anybody else?
Believing and putting our voices into practice so youth can be taken seriously.
Thank you. Yes, believing and putting our voices into practice. Somebody said they think about the importance of being heard when they think about youth voice. And I think it really connects to that last line, right? You can, do something to speak or to express yourself, but the question is, will you be taken seriously? And sometimes, adults, we get conditioned, to think that maybe youth don't have very insightful ideas and innovative solutions, right? And so the question is, how can we ensure that when you all speak, when you all express yourself with poetry or theater or video or what have you, that adults must listen. Adults, have no excuse, but they have to take you all seriously. And so I want to just share this idea with you all that I think could really help young folks in Casa Grande be taken very seriously. And this is a method called youth participatory action research. I'm going to read the definition. So you have participatory action research, and YPAR, or youth participatory action research, kind of builds off of that, right? So participatory action research empowers community members to learn and apply research techniques in order to discover solutions to issues in their community. YPAR, or youth participatory action research, is when youth and adults partner to improve their conditions of their lives and their communities using these research techniques. The information that comes out of the YPAR process is meant to be used to advocate for change in the communities. And so I'm just curious, has anyone ever heard of this term YPAR, or youth participatory action research? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of this. So, if I had more time, I could tell y'all about, there's a youth social entrepreneurship, right? There's young people who are starting businesses, that are making a lot of money, that are making a lot of impact. Youth are involved in a lot of different ways of change making, and we don't hear or see a lot of this in the social media. And one of the movements that's happening is researchers are partnering with youth to conduct research in their communities, right? Because it's, of course, can be powerful for you to share your story and your insights. But if you have, Piper, if you have 100 or 200 or 1,000 people that you've interviewed or collected data from, and you share your story and you said, well, here is also the data. We live in a time and an age where it seems like if we ain't got no data, what we're discussing don't even matter. And so imagine being equipped with the support, with the tools to be able to really speak truth to power, right? And so I want to give you all a couple of examples. And so there's a little city west of here, maybe y'all heard of it, called Oakland. Now, Oakland, like every other city in the United States, is dealing with an issue. And what is the issue? The issue is that young folks of color, Black and brown and indigenous youth, are oftentimes suspended or expelled at 6 times the rate of their white counterparts for doing the same thing that their white counterparts are doing. That is one of the major contributing factors to young people dropping out. And a dropout is 8 times more likely to end up incarcerated. So young folks in Oakland, with the support of adults, started to analyze the data, started collecting the records of who was being suspended and why. And through that process of doing youth participatory action research, they were able to create a very powerful argument, a very powerful insight to say, you know what, we need to stop suspending folks, and we need to start engaging them in restorative practices, right? And so with that, it kind of reminds me of the story. One of the places that we're working is down in New Mexico. And I remember when we were making a film there, I heard a story about a young guy named Quincy. And Quincy, as he turned out, brought a knife to school. And so the teacher had a sandwich, and I guess some of the students were hungry. And the teacher said, you know, I really wish I had a knife. I could cut this sandwich up. And Quincy says, I got a knife. So he comes up with the knife, and she's like, oh, thank you. And she's like, what? You're not supposed to have a knife at school. So Quincy goes down to talk to the dean. And the dean, in this particular context, they're using kind of a restorative practice. They're using a model where they are concerned about the wellness of youth. And so he starts going through the model. Okay, Quincy, help me understand. You know, why'd you do this? Are you getting enough sleep, man? Are you getting enough to eat? Yeah. Are you feeling safe? And Quincy says, no. He says, when I come from my neighborhood down to the school on the bus, there's some shady characters. And so that's why I'm carrying this knife. And he says, Quincy, there's organizations in the community that are advocating for safety, and you know, there's other things you can do other than bringing a knife. And so he says, I'm going to provide for you the opportunity to connect with these community organizations. And so Quincy did. And he learned some different techniques. And Quincy ends up coming back to the school, leading circles with the young men. He starts an alternative transportation route to school. He creates a bike club, and folks bring old bikes, and then they pimp them out. They make them into like these cool lowrider bikes. And so instead of being suspended, instead of being excluded, he gets included. He gets empowered. And this is the way that all schools should be. Another example is through the folks that I met in San Francisco. This is a friend, Allison, has a group called PEP, Pinay Educational Partnerships, primarily working with Asian youth, specifically Filipino youth. And so these Filipino youth, they felt sort of hurt and rejected that they were going to school and they weren't ever learning about their people or their culture. They were never seeing themselves reflected in the curriculum. And they started doing research. They started realizing that there was data, that, you know, this idea of ethnic studies, that if students are learning about their culture and their history and their background, they tend to do better in school. They graduate more often. They continue to college more often. And so these young folks took this data and they started turning it into poetry. They started turning it into theater, and they started combining the science and the art. And do you know what happened? Through their presentations to the superintendent, they were able to change the policy for San Francisco public schools. So every single school in the district has to teach ethnic studies, which means not just Asian, but Black Americans, Latinx Americans, and the like will go through school, and at some point we'll see authors and we'll see characters and stories that reflect their identity and their background. And that's huge. I remember coming up from K through 12 and middle school, high school, and all that. I never read one single author who was not white. Not one. I never was exposed to James Baldwin or, you know, Toni Morrison or, you know, Sonia Sanchez until after high school. And when I started to read these other authors, that also changed my life. So I'm actually going to skip this story unless we have more time. But there's been some processes that have taken place similarly in Chicago that have led young people to creating their own art center. And I can come back to that in the Q&A. So how does this whole thing work? So starting with the purple arrow at the top, it starts with personal and collective reflection. We come together, we reflect, you know, pardon my French, but what are we pissed off about? What's bothering us? And what are the goals and themes that are important to us? To think through, what are the questions? How are we going to go about collecting the data, to put together a data collection plan, to gather the data, to then analyze the data, and to think, okay, how can we disseminate this? How can we develop a strategy where people must listen? Who do we want to engage? And then taking action, right? Engaging the folks with the data and moving the needle. Now, part of the reason why I'm here is, although I work all over the nation, is I've been hearing about a very amazing phenomenon happening in Casa Grande. I've been hearing about young folks engaged with deep community development, doing artistic projects, young folks, you know, hosting and holding youth conferences and engaging publicly elected officials. And I've been very impressed by the work that you all are doing under the leadership of Bob Sjogren. And so recently through Bob, I've been hearing that there's some interest in understanding how are teenagers and young folks doing during the pandemic. People are losing family members and friends. Folks are losing jobs. Raise your hand if you know someone who has passed. Look around the room, right? Raise your other hand if you know someone who has either lost their job or really struggled financially during this time. Raise your hand if you know someone who's become homeless as a result of this pandemic. Look at all these hands, right? And so I've been really amazed. I've been really profoundly touched by your care, by your desire to get an understanding of what's happening and maybe how to do something differently. So, you know, I've shared some tools and some instruments with Bob, and understand that you all have been kind of thinking these questions through and adding questions and, you know, bouncing these ideas off of other educators and adults. What I propose, familia, is that we more formally move forward with a strategy, right? And I think knowing that many of you are poets and artists and have different ways of expressing yourself, you know, we can maybe lean into the possibility of, once we get this survey back, this thriving and well-being survey, and Bob last told me that now the superintendent of the high school has agreed to implement this. So we're talking about 6,000 young people doing this survey. Guys, do you understand from a research perspective how important and how powerful that is? You all are like, you know, you ever heard the phrase, you know, you don't come to a gunfight with a knife, right? You all are coming to the gunfight, if we want to use that metaphor, with a tank, with a whole slew of tanks. What could happen from this data could, I believe, fundamentally change the fabric and the culture of Casa Grande. So what I'm proposing, and again, if y'all ain't interested in this, that's fine. But what I'm proposing is that together, with my support and with support from people I know around the country who are experts in this, that we gather this data, we analyze this data, we figure out what the findings are and what the recommendations are, your recommendations. And I don't know if, you know, if we just want to do PowerPoint slides, or maybe a combination of PowerPoint slides and some poetry or some theater or some video stuff, but we do something fun and creative, and we bring the community in and we share what we found. we share the good stuff, and we share the stuff that really needs to be improved. And possibly we engage in a process that I call co-dreaming, that we help these adults to not default to being old people, but to be elders, and to exercise that muscle that maybe is atrophy, help them to dream, to co-dream what it could be like if Casa Grande were a place where every young person could reach their potential. And taking the quantitative data, taking the qualitative ideas of the community and the families that you all engage, we take all of that and we present that to the superintendent of Casa Grande. And based on the findings and what we hear from the community, you know, it could very well be the case that based off of what you all learn, that you understand, look, we got a bunch of young folks who are homeless, a bunch of young folks who aren't eating properly, a bunch of young folks who are concerned because family members are sick or unemployed. Why in the world are we going to make it the goal of the district for everyone to do well on the standardized test if young people are suffering, right? So what I'm suggesting is that you all, with this data, could have the power to shape an agenda that you feel is important. Maybe it's the establishment of a well-being department. Maybe it's the establishment of a council of youth and community that helps to guide the agenda of the district for years to come. So in addition to this, we are also engaging with our familia and friends in Valago Middle School. We're working with Miss Monica Diaz in creating a youth council, a youth leadership group that I'm hoping can be in connection with you all. And they're going to also be administering this survey in their school. They're going to be engaging in conversations and interviews with their peers. And they're going to use that data to inform the staff, to inform the administration on what should be the goals of the school. I spoke with Jeff Lavender, who's the principal of the school, last week. He says he wants the youth and the community to shape the mission and the vision of the school, to shape the agenda of what needs to be accomplished, what needs to be the focus, and to be held accountable. He wants to administer the survey throughout the year and throughout the next year. And so I think there's some really great opportunity here. So I guess I'm calling this an internship. I don't know. Maybe we call it an externship too, because we're going to go outside and do some work in the real field. But through this internship, you will have the opportunity to co-facilitate a YPAR project that seeks to transform how Casa Grande prioritizes and supports the well-being and thriving of its youth during the pandemic. So with this, you'll have my support, the support of Bob, Joe, and many others, as well as a connection to an international network. I will expose you all to young people in New Zealand, New Mexico, New York, all over the world who are standing up to advocate for change, because they understand that the solution is not going to come from the youth. The solution is going to come from you, the youth. And it's time to start building this movement where folks can support each other. So with that, family, I'm going to pause. I know I've been talking a lot, and see if y'all have questions or just reactions. What are y'all thinking right now?
How many members do you have in the organization right now?
It's a good question. So when you say members, are you asking like employees or just different groups that are doing this youth work?
Just different groups that are doing the work.
It's a good question. I would say it's an ever evolving number. There's a lot of folks who are doing work in isolation. You know, we just got connected a couple of weeks ago to a group in Colorado who are doing powerful work, but they haven't been connecting to other youth who are doing similar work in other places.
Right.
So we're really seeing our role is kind of helping these young leaders to get out of these silos. So I would say off the top, there's 5 groups that I know of and I'm connected to who are doing this work, this youth research. But I know when I say the term research, it maybe sounds boring, it maybe sounds dry, but what I'm talking about is like stories, right? Understanding people's stories and being able to communicate that in a way that you feel, just like the definition of youth voice, is authentic to who you are. So maybe it is poetry, maybe it's dance, I don't know, but there's a way to share these stories that I know can get people's attention. Thank you for the question.
You're welcome.
Yes, in the blue and gold.
What are some
That's Valia.
Oh, hey, what's up?
So what are some projects that you and your youth groups are currently working on?
Yeah, good. Well, the way that this is set up is that there's, local leaders who are, leading these groups. So I'm kind of working more as a facilitator to connect these groups across regions. But I am working more intimately with the group in New York. This group in New York, I'm so excited to connect you all with them. So there was a myth, sometimes stories, they slip into the space of myth and you don't know if it's real or not. And so there was a myth that in this city in upstate New York called Kingston, I'll just tell you the name, that there was somebody's backyard in this myth had a bunch of dead bodies in it, right? And so finally, some of the youth said, you know what, we keep hearing this kind of urban myth or this legend. Let's see, is this for real? And so it turns out that at the university is a guy who has, if you can imagine kind of, those little machines you can find gold or metal, or, you see folks using them on the beach sometimes, like a metal detector. Well, he had a high-powered sort of metal detector device, and he went out there, and guess what he found? 300 bodies had been buried in this land. And through additional experimentation, they found out this was a mass graveyard for slaves, that a bunch of slaves hundreds of years ago, right? I don't know whether it be through, murder or disease or a combination of things. Once they died, their bodies were dumped in this mass grave, right? And so the young folks in Kingston said, okay, now we know this is real. And so the house that was there, they got some money and they got some support to turn that house into a museum. And they turned that backyard and that land into a garden, a very beautiful garden, where they decided to plant different plants and herbs that were indigenous to the parts of Africa where these slaves came from. And so they created this garden, they created this museum, and started sharing the story of, this is the history of Kingston. This city was built on the backs of slaves. We need to honor them. We need to commemorate them. We need to tell this story, right? And so from that came this momentum and this energy where folks were like, whoa, youth were a part of this? This is incredible. And so that led them to more recently deciding that Kingston, they found out, I'm giving you a lot of story here, but Kingston, they found out was where Sojourner of Truth won a court case to get her son out of slavery. It was the first time that a Black woman in the United States won a court case, right? Sojourner of Truth. It was also a stop in the Underground Railroad. So she had a very deep connection to the city and this land. And they decided to honor her by having a Sojourner of Truth holiday in Kingston, which they got passed, which is officially happening now forever, right? So now they've taken the next steps in, getting a partnership and getting support in writing a piece of legislation where Sojourner of Truth Day would be a day that's celebrated throughout the entire state of New York. So that's just, one example of some of the work that's happened there. In Hawaii, which is another place we're connected to, the young folks were able to do some deep research on one of the rivers. And they found out that a lot of these corporations were dumping, pollutants into the rivers. And through the support with researchers and collecting data, they were able to use this to get the corporations to stop dumping these toxins into the river, right? And the river has become since fully restored, right? So there's young folks doing all this stuff, and they don't know that other young people around the world care and are doing similar work. And so we're helping to kind of facilitate and amplify and build this movement. Anybody else have a question?
Let me ask everybody here, what do you think? Casa, what are you hearing from Roberto? Can somebody put it in your own words? Anybody? Yeah, sure.
That even though we have these things like these lines, some places still don't have a voice and people still don't get that, even though we have something that they can go to for help.
Mm-hmm. So some places don't have a place where kids can speak up and speak out. Absolutely.
Yes.
How about you, Piper? I'm learning.
There's a lot of good change that's going on and helping some parts of the world heal and create a better environment for people.
So the use of the word heal in that statement is really, really big.
Yes.
And I think it's really, really important. And I would add, in addition to some people, it's some people and a bunch of kids, and a bunch of kids. So awesome. Great comment. Anyone else hearing anything here?
I think what they're doing is really good. I think that every person, young people especially, should deserve an opportunity to go down the right path. And I think that if we can help them out and encourage them to be part of something bigger than themselves, like in the community, like in a church or whatever, I think that'd be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And we have the survey. And at some point soon, I think we'll have results. And Roberto, I'm still kind of working. I got some forward motion with the middle schools in the last couple of days.
Awesome.
And high schools, I followed up with the high school leaders, and it sounds, kind of sounds to me like right now what's going on with the kids is they're getting surveyed to death. So they kind of wanna, and Valia's shaking her head yes. So they kind of wanna like figure out the timing of it so that we get good results, so we get good data. So it may not start happening for another couple of weeks, but it kind of sounds to me like it's really gonna, I'd say by mid-December, we'll really have some good results. So
yeah, well, thank you for that update, Bob. And I think that's complementary to what I was discussing with Jeff Lavender with respect to me coming to Casa Grande. It's looking like I will most likely come to Casa Grande sometime in February. He thought maybe the end of February.
okay.
And, if you all are open to it, potentially, that would give us enough time to analyze the data, to kind of strategically think, how do we want to use this? How do we want to share this? Jeff Lavender is also already giving us an opportunity to be able to present what you all find to the city council and to the mayor, right? So the idea is when I come down in February, you all will be prepared to present your findings scientifically and artistically to the mayor and city council, to the superintendents, to the leaders of different schools. And to the community, right? And
Yeah.
so we'll really try to make the most out of my coming down. I think Dr. Shareem Hannigan Martinez is also coming down. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining us. So hold on, before you leave,
Wait,
are y'all gonna
oh,
are y'all gonna be part of this this movement and this effort? Give me a thumbs up if yes, thumbs down if absolutely not, thumbs like this if I don't know. Thumbs up. All right, thank
They're
you so
both in
much.
my class. They don't have a choice, bro.
Nice.
Any other reactions?
Reactions to what he just said, or
Or just in general.
Just kind of what he's been talking about for the last hour. Any other reaction?
I kind of had another question, but I don't know, like, it's kind of like opinion based, like on his part though.
Okay, shoot.
So based off of what you have heard us say, or like, I don't know if you visited our city, like, what do you think our like next step should be, like project wise? Like, what do you see within like our community that you think needs to be like addressed?
Mhm. It's a good question. And very conveniently that connects to my next slide.
Good job, man.
I think honestly, I think it's brilliant. I don't know all the nuances of the conversation that you all have been having with Bob. My understanding is that you all care about how your peers are doing, that you all are concerned with their well-being, right? I think it's amazing that we have a survey that the superintendent has agreed to administer to all the high school and potentially all the middle school. That's huge, right? I think it would be great if we could take some time and reflect, you know what I mean? Like even before the data comes in, to really, connect as an effort and reflect, okay, how do we want to use this data? Like, and once the data comes in, to really, kind of lean in and learn more about the youth participatory action research process. I would also love to expose you all to people who are doing this work, to the youth in, Oakland, the youth in New York. I want you to meet them, right? To get energized, to share some ideas. And then from this time of connecting and learning and all of that, really getting into the research and what are the findings from these surveys, right? And to come up with a plan, like how do we want to create an environment where you share these findings and engage the community, engage the leadership, engage the district leaders. You all are going to be driving this, right? Myself, Joe Martinez, Bob Shogren, and other elders here, we're going to be supporting you all from behind, right? And that's our role. Is not to lead this. My role is to facilitate this and have you all drive this. And does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, so what I would propose.
She said yes, and she was shaking her head no.
Yeah. So what I would propose more practically is that we start meeting more regularly.
Yeah.
That we start meeting weekly, every other week.
Can we do every other week?
Isn't that what we have been doing? But like, I know this month's been off, but like, isn't that what we've
We've pretty much been doing monthly. So we've only been meeting once a month. So if we met in 2 weeks, that would be the 27th. So that would be the Saturday. Well, we're gonna have to meet to put together the float. That Friday or that Saturday of Thanksgiving. So I think we could plan a chunk of time to continue this conversation at that time. Is everybody gonna be around during Thanksgiving?
I'm
Say again?
I said we won't be at so I'll be down.
Oh, okay, okay, cool.
I'm not leaving.
Okay, well, maybe we can do a turkey for that.
So how are you,
Kidding.
how are you reaching out to us? Because I didn't even know this existed until my sad coach emailed us.
Who did?
Miss South.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's been kind of, we've been relying on key people at schools to get the word out. And it's been pretty slow going. Then we've done some work with social media. But we welcome students. We want to have a crew from every middle school and high school be a part of this project and be a part of this conversation. And I know that we don't have a lot of people participating at this level from Vista Grande right now. We do have a crew like Valia, and there's a couple of others, Sophia Jorda, and is it Maria?
Yeah.
From Maria Vasquez is from Union as well. Yeah.
How will you reach out to us for like volunteering? and
Well,
volunteer events?
You gave me your email,
Okay.
so that's how.
Alright.
So I'll just add you all to the email list. And then, yeah, we've been doing the Remind app as well.
Roberto, I
Yes.
just wanted to say that, my biggest takeaway here today, I'm middle school teacher, social studies teacher. And I have, my roster consists of roughly about 140, 50 kids that I see daily. So my biggest takeaway here is, for me in my class, I'm going to make this survey thing a lesson, right? It's gonna be a lesson for them to do.
Love
They're
it.
always asking me
Yes.
for freaking free time. So now I have a bargaining tool is to get the survey done, because that's 140 students that I can conceivably touch right there.
Yeah.
That I have control over in
That's
my
huge.
room.
That's
So that was just my biggest takeaway here for me right now, to say, oh, I mean, I know we have to chip away at it, but for myself as a teacher, I know that I have those students coming through my door on a daily basis.
Mhm.
And that can have some impact.
That's powerful. Thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
Can you remind me your name one more time?
Oh, Deidre Crudup. Yeah, you could call me Dee.
Okay, Deetra, thank you. And what middle school are you with?
CGMS, right here on campus.
Okay. Okay. And CGMS is that Casa Grande Middle School or?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. No, I think that's brilliant. And 140 youth is significant. That's a lot of
Yeah.
stories. That's a lot of realities, right? My only encouragement is that, to think through, how do we want to utilize this data, right? To empower the young folks to realize, okay, look, what we're doing here is really getting a sense of where folks are at. And we can use this data to make a change at the school. I mean, Valago right now is really our pilot and what it looks like to influence, again, the mission, the vision of the school, the professional developments that are going to take place. Our hope is that movement would trickle, I don't like that term very well, but it would trickle to other middle schools and other high schools, that are engaging young people in a way that is meaningful in this time of the pandemic, right? So we're here to support you. As Bob said, I think the dream is that we would have ambassadors from every middle school, from every high school that would be coming together, that would be helping to shape the agenda for the superintendents of both districts, shaping the agenda for the Casa Grande City Council. My goal in this, I'm going to just be transparent. I'm the director of the Alliance for the Seventh Generation. Our mission is to do work that could positively impact young people 200 years from now, right? So what I'm trying to build with you all here is something that 10, 20 years, generations from now will still be having a positive effect in these schools, in the community, and in the city, right? So imagine that this council is built in such a way that when you all graduate from high school and go do great things, you can still be a part, you'd be the alumni. We have the alumni board, get your scholarship money from Bob, don't forget about that. But you will have replacements that come back and fill your seats. And this continues generation after generation. So I'm just being, upfront, and that's an experiment, right? this may not work. We maybe can't impact 200 years, but hey, even if we could impact 100 years, I'll be happy with it.
Any other questions or reactions? Anything else at all?
So maybe,
So-
you know, one thing, just a suggestion here, and I've done this with some of the other groups, you know, I don't know if it's a Google folder or some other platform, Dropbox or something. I would love to share videos with you all of young people presenting to the Ministry of Education in New Zealand, their research findings. You know, I love to share some of the other videos and just stuff so you can get a feel of what it looks like for young people to really have a voice that's taken seriously. So what platform do you think would be best for?
So I think send it to me and then we'll get it into like a Dropbox or Google folder. Everybody seems to speak Google around here, so
Right.
so that would be cool. So we're gonna look, just to kind of summarize really quickly, we're gonna look at scheduling time on the Friday after Thanksgiving or the Saturday after Thanksgiving, and we're probably gonna book a little more time so that we can work on the flow, get that kind of ready to go. And then also, we wanna make sure that we have some time to continue the conversation with Roberto. Something else I'd like you to all think about, and this could be just kind of like the beginning of whatever it is that we're gonna create, but something I'd really love to see us do and have some real conversation about is, last year we did a spoken word contest for MLK Day where people submitted their videos. And I'd like to maybe come up with a topic for that. And I don't know, I think we gave $500 for the first prize. I can't remember what it was. But
It was 200, or I think it was at least 200.
yeah, it was pretty good. It's pretty good.
Yeah,
Um,
Katie and JC won that.
Yeah. So we want to do that again for sure. But you know, if we can hone in on the right topic or the right subject that kind of feeds into the power of youth, and what it means to be active, positively involved, that kind of thing, I think would be really
I think
cool.
it'd be good, Bob, to include a visual art on that as well.
Okay.
The spoken word and visual art.
So we'll put that plan together when we meet again. We'll work on building the float and we'll spend some more time with Roberto. If he can possibly give up an hour of his long Thanksgiving weekend to be with the island of misfit toys in Casa Grande.
Well, I tell you what, I know I'm going to be in Chicago that weekend, you know, with my whole family and stuff. But look, you know, if you all are willing to make the commitment to this, I will take time to connect and to support you all in this effort. I may be in a coffee shop or have some kids dangling from this chandelier over here or something, but we're going to connect. We're going to make it happen. My other
That's family, brother. That's family.
That's family, right? The other thing is, you know, I don't know if this is too much of a stretch, but if you all are in the practice of doing things for Martin Luther King's Day, and, you know, we're thinking we could get some of the data analyzed by the middle of December or even the end of December, it could be possible that some of the findings from the data could be shared with some of the poets. And so, you know, I'm just making this up, but imagine, you know, a lot of young people in Casa Grande, you know, are homeless or not getting sufficient food. You know, if these are topics that you all are concerned about, maybe there's a way to connect that to Dr. King's dream and his advocacy for folks to have equal access to decent housing and their basic needs being met, right? So maybe there's a way to connect some of these things, is my encouragement.
Right.
And the Unity March is on this year.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so we're doing the Unity March again this year, Roberto. So
Okay, great.
COVID grounded us last year. So actually, it's been the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Just last year, I think we didn't do it. We ran it 16 years consecutively, and then COVID shut us down, but we're gonna be doing it again this year. And so, but I had a just kind of a thought came to me while you were talking. I think it would be great if our students could be exposed to some of the students that have benefited from your mentorship and your processing on that end. So, and you know, right off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like David and Zenny. If we
Yeah.
could get them on the screen,
Yeah.
where the kids could kind of Q&A with them back and forth, and just, you know, what was their experience as a youth, their age coming through it, the process. I know our process is going to be different, but I think that would be, if we could work it out, you know, I think that would be a crucial, essential element component to our building. So I don't know how you feel about that, Bob.
Yeah. If they're willing to give up some time at Thanksgiving, I think.
I don't know if they do it then, but at some
Yeah.
point in this
Yeah.
process, we definitely.
Right.
I'd actually like to see us build here numerically, so we can get optimize the benefit of being exposed to these kids. So I agree. Yeah.
No, I think it's an excellent idea, Joe. One of the things that comes to mind too is, again, you know, in the spirit of doing this together, it could be powerful if maybe there's a couple of folks who are here today that would like to, you know, meet, or at least, you know, we could exchange some emails and really figuring out, okay, what is the agenda for the consecutive, you know, meetings in 2 weeks and 4 weeks and so forth. So it's not just me thinking, okay, well, we're going to do this. You know, I could kind of share, here's what's available. What do you all think is appropriate? So I'm just curious, by a show of hands, who would be interested in shaping the agenda for the next time that we meet together? Yeah. Okay.
Making the list.
Yeah. It's something that we can discuss in my academic lab class, because
Okay, perfect.
I'm meeting with.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Well, I want to again thank you all for taking time on this Saturday to meet, to connect, to share, to engage. I'm excited. I'm here to support you moving forward, and I'm looking forward to it. It's gonna be fun. It's gonna be fun, and it's gonna be a cool ride. So I'm excited. So with that, familia, I think I'm gonna.
Wait. I would like for somebody to volunteer to express your thanks to Roberto for being with us today.
I did already.
I wasn't talking about us old people here. Yes, Sam. Piper.
Thank you so much for being here with us and teaching us and opening our eyes to more innovative ideas and stuff.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
So hit people, snap.
Let's snap it up, man.
All right, Layla.
Layla, hand up.
Just wanted to say thanks for taking the time out of your day to come talk with us.
Did you catch
Thank
that?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Leila, and thank you for engaging and sharing your insights. I appreciate it.
Right on. And Delia?
On behalf of the Casa Grande Youth Alliance, we want to thank you.
Oh, okay. That was a very
We really
official.
appreciate your time, and I know you've met with us before, but we really do appreciate you reaching out to us continually, and just like trying to assist us.
It's a pleasure, and I look forward to being side by side with your powerful voice and your leadership. So let's keep building. All right.
One last thing I want to share is that for a number of years I was a junior high student council advisor at a junior high on the other side of this county, and the kids were so switched on to leadership, and they were so committed to making a difference on their campus that there was one year in particular where like everything really clicked. And the mood of the students on the campus was better than it ever been before. And the kids were involved and enthused and excited, and kids were getting good grades in classrooms, and it was all driven by 7th and 8th graders. I mean, genuinely, it was driven by the positive participation, the involvement, and the voice of 7th and 8th graders. I've seen it done, and it really is magic. It really is. And I think that, you know, one of the things that we're really kind of looking at here is doing something on a much bigger scale. So we're really going to have to kind of focus on like figuring out what the data says, and then figuring out the best way to communicate that, and how do we shine a light on it so bright that people can't ignore it.
That's right.
You know,
That's right.
how do we shine a light on it so bright that more students join in, more young people join in, you know? So so I feel like we're at the front edge of something that's really big, and it will take all of your voices to make it happen.
Yeah.
And it will take all of your positive participation and hard work and support to make it happen. And I think you've got an extraordinary opportunity to have an impact. So thank you all for being here today.
Yeah, thank you all. All right, I look forward to this journey. Y'all be well. See y'all in a couple weeks. Don't overeat too much turkey and stuffing.
Did you just call me a turkey?
And stuff.
All right, Bob. Thank you again for the invite, Joe. Always great to see you, bro.